What's up guys, my name is Ace, and this week's weekly challenge in Black Ops 7 awards the Redwell Shade-X Suppressor, which isn't limited to any particular gun. This is available on effectively all of them. And today we're going to be taking a deep look at this to see if it's the new best suppressor, if you should be using this, or if you should be sticking to the regular suppressor or monolithic if you want to use a suppressor in the first place. So diving right into the basics, looking at the pros and cons here, the pros are obviously staying off the radar when firing your gun, as a suppressor should. But this one also helps with vertical and horizontal recoil control, and it comes at the cost of damage range and bullet velocity. And taking a deeper look here at the advanced stats, when it comes to our recoil improvement, it improves our vertical and horizontal recoil by 11%, and it's worth noting it also improves our gun kick by 11%. And gun kick is not just purely visual recoil, but it often goes hand in hand with visual recoil. It's how much your gun is bouncing around. This does also affect your shot placement to a degree, but as far as the total magnitude of climb or sideways movement, essentially your recoil path, that's usually reserved for horizontal recoil control and vertical recoil control. In either case, just looking at the numbers here might not really be enough to know how much of an improvement you're actually seeing in game, so I decided to just test a handful of guns from different weapon categories to show you guys what it looks like with and without this suppressor. The only thing that's changing here is the suppressor itself. And looking at the M15 assault rifle, you can definitely see a really nice improvement here. Not only does it not climb nearly as much, you're seeing less horizontal movement with that as well, so definitely easier to control that. Then for another assault rifle, we have the Peacekeeper Mark I. And again, we're actually seeing everything compress really nicely there. The gaps between those bullets are much smaller than the base, and therefore you would absolutely notice the improvement to recoil with that here. Also, you can see just how little it's deviating from that vertical line compared to the base, where it initially leans a bit to the right and then cuts back. There's clearly less drift there. Then getting into some SMGs, we can see the comparison here with the Raiden 45K. This one really cuts down nicely on that. It's like it just shrunk the entire recoil pattern by a lot more than 11%, it looks like. But keep in mind, this is on a per bullet basis that you're seeing this recoil improvement. And as a result, that can often compound as you're firing a full recoil plot. Also with the MPC-25, this one is notorious for climbing super hard as you fire. And while it still climbs pretty hard, it's a lot less while using the Redwell Shade-X Suppressor, so huge improvement there. Then for an LMG, the Sokol 545 in the low RPM mode, we can see there's definitely an improvement there. It's very similar across the board here, as expected. I mean, we see the same recoil reduction. I just wanted to show a variety of weapons here. And then finally, for something a little bit different, we have the Warden 308, and with this, it's a little bit less noticeable, and I think a lot of that is due to the fact that our recoil pattern comes down to the recoil recovery, how quickly it recovers between shots fired, rather than the raw recoil input itself. So yeah, with this one, you might not notice as much of a difference, but it still does help a little bit. But overall, outside of that Warden test at least, I would say I was quite surprised by just how much this improves your recoil control across the board. Like I said, 11% might not seem like a lot, but since it is on a per bullet basis, it really adds up as you continue firing your gun. And therefore, the pros on this are quite strong. However, what are the downsides? Like we said, we see a reduction to bullet velocity and damage range. And when it comes to our velocity reduction, this is a 13% loss to bullet velocity. As for damage range, I also went through and calculated that, and it does appear we see a roughly 13% reduction to our damage range as well. And so when it comes to whether or not the pros are worth the cons, it's really just going to come down to the individual gun that you're using and perhaps some of the other attachments you plan on combining. When it comes to that 13% loss to bullet velocity, for many of the guns in this game, you really won't notice a difference in 6v6 multiplayer, since the average engagement range is going to be well within your hit scan range already, and reducing that hit scan range a little bit by reducing your bullet velocity isn't really going to matter. Whereas for other guns, especially like SMGs for instance, you often don't really have much bullet velocity to sacrifice. You don't want to give up too much on that, and therefore you may want to be a little more hesitant to use this suppressor unless you really want to go for the best possible recoil control. And it's the same story with damage range. Some guns can absolutely afford to lose a bit of damage range. It really won't make that much of a difference, whereas others need to squeeze out as much damage range as possible. And so, like I said, you really just need to judge this on a gun-by-gun and build-by-build basis. And I think that's a good thing. When I initially saw that they were adding the suppressor, I thought it was going to be another one of those cases where it's just going to be the new obvious choice as your muzzle, just like the Quartermaster suppressor in Modern Warfare 3, for those that remember that. There was really no reason not to use that suppressor over like most of the other muzzles in that game once they added it. This time around, we've got some clear choices to make, and you really have to know your gun and your setup and what you're trying to build in order to make the right choice. So with this one, it's really designed for guns where you want to get a bit more accuracy out of the gun. Maybe it really struggles with recoil, but it's okay in the bullet velocity and damage range department. In that case, this is an excellent choice. Whereas for other guns, you might want to go with the monolithic suppressor that's going to be helping to improve our damage range and bullet velocity. And that could be good on some of the guns that struggle in that area, but that comes at the cost of handling. Whereas in many other cases, I'm still just going to be using the standard suppressor because there are no downsides attached to this outside of the opportunity cost of using a suppressor rather than one of the compensators, for instance, or muzzles. And I think that's excellent. There's no clear winner here when it comes to the best suppressor overall. And that's a sign of them actually knowing what they're doing when it comes to balancing these attachments. Going forward, I will absolutely be using this Redwell Shade-X Suppressor on some of my guns, some of my builds. You're going to see it integrated into my gun guide series, but it's not like I'm going to be using it on all of them. And with that, this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about the Redwell Shade-X Suppressor in Black Ops 7? Do you guys think you'll be using this very often? Or maybe not so much? Do you maybe not really want to sacrifice in the range and bullet velocity department? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.